Jagdeo has expressed surprise at Canada's move to deport several hundred persons despite granting some refugee status.
Prime Minister Samuel Hines calls on citizens to unite in efforts to avoid a recurrence of the Lusignan massacre as an interfaith vigil is held in the honor of the victims.
And the 26-year-old fisherman is sentenced to 20 years imprisonment after being found guilty of a lesser count of manslaughter.
And of course, we will bring you the latest sporting action in Diamond, Mineral Water and NCN Sport News. Hello, good evening. I am Janelle Prasad.
And I'm Paul Moore.
With this edition of the 6 o'clock news for today, Tuesday, January 27, 2009. Here's what's happening. Paul.
Thanks, Janelle. President Barry Jagdeo has expressed surprise at Canada's move to deport several hundred persons despite granting some refugee status. The president made this statement in response to Canadian High Commissioner Charles Court, who has disclosed that several hundred Guyanese are awaiting deportation. Edward Lane reports.
Canadian High Commissioner to Guyana Charles Court recently disclosed that around 700 to 800 Guyanese are to be deported here. He stated that this figure is similar to the number pending deportation to Mexico, Iran and other countries which have larger populations. Mr. Court noted that the Commission, through the Canadian Fund for Local Initiatives, has established an organization which aims to help reintegrate deportees. But President Barry Jagdeo says he finds it strange that Canada would accept refugees from Guyana and at the same time deport persons back here. The head of state says while Canadian authorities have been engaged on the matter, they claim that the executive does not have any control over bodies that make such decisions.
But you bet if anything goes wrong in our courts here, they expect Jagdeo, the president, to answer for that. I have to answer for even problems that are made independently, decisions that are made independently in the court. The ambassadors would come and discuss those things with me, and they expect me to fix them. Well, the same should apply in this case.
Mr. Jagdeo, however, pointed out that there were discussions about how Guyana can accommodate some persons coming back.
I gather there are some people who just want to leave. They're the immigration type, deportees and who've had problems with immigration and they want to come back home. So I think that there's been some movement in that category.
The Canadian High Commissioner said that during his 2-year tenure here, some 160 Guyanese have been deported. According to him, less than 5% have criminal code convictions in Canada. In 2003, the United States deported 379 Guyanese, 38 of whom were refused entry at the border, while 135 were convicted for drug-related and other serious offenses. President Jagdeo had previously expressed concerns about the return of criminal deportees without any proper system in place to facilitate their reintegration into society. Edward Lane, the 6 o'clock news.
A 26-year-old fisherman has been sentenced to 20 years imprisonment after being found guilty of a lesser count of manslaughter. Tony Francis Dewati appeared before Justice James Bubble-Drakes at the Surrey Supreme Court, where the verdict was delivered. He was charged back in 2003 for the murder of Derek Samaru, called Taurus of Paradise, on the Essequibo coast. Prime Minister Samuel Hines has called on citizens to unite in efforts to avoid a recurrence of the Lusignan massacre. He was speaking at the Indian Arrival Committee's Interfaith Vigil last evening in Lusignan to mark the first anniversary of the killings. Here again is Edward Lane.
Great is thy faithfulness, morning by morning.
Prime Minister Samuel Hines, in his contribution, called on those gathered to use the killings as a lesson to guard against any such recurrence. He noted that January 26, 2008 was a test for Guyanese, and all must unite for justice and support the security forces.
For all of us who have gone through that test, we should be committed to ensure that our country keeps going, so that the sacrifice, the deaths of those 11 persons, the suffering of all their family members would not go in vain.
Meanwhile, Chairman of the Ethnic Relation Commission, Bishop Juan Edgel, echoed similar sentiments, noting that if Guyana is to move forward, human rights must be respected and life valued.
In the aftermath of this barbaric killing, we are left to wonder how people can commit such an act and what measures people of goodwill can take to ensure that such an outrageous crime is never repeated.
Meanwhile, executive member of the IAC, Evan Prasad, has disclosed that the event will be an annual feature on the IAC's calendar.
We in the IAC are now working with the 5 families, and we hope in the near future to have some sort of simple monument to commemorate the lives of these persons whose lives were brutally snuffed out.
The victims were Shazam Mohammed, Clarence Thomas, his son Ron 11 years, and daughter Vanessa 12, Mohande Gurdat 32, her 2 children Sigobin 4 and Sigopal 10, Shalim Baksh 52, Ruplal Sicharan 56, his daughter Rewati Ramsingh 11, and his wife Danraji 52. Edward Lane, the 6 o'clock news.
The Ministry of Agriculture is placing more emphasis on research as it moves to tackle climate change challenges which threaten the sector. More in this report.
As the climate change phenomenon evolves, there is urgent need for the local agricultural sector to adapt if it is to remain viable. Ghana's rice and sugar subsectors are among those particularly at risk. According to Agriculture Minister Robert Prasad, extensive research and tests were conducted on rice varieties that are resistant to pest infestation and adverse weather changes.
And certainly in 2009 that work will continue. Once it's been tested and fully developed and proven that it's a viable variety, then it will be made available certainly for commercial purposes.
Minister Prasad says government is committed to investing resources in order to improve research and extension services within the rice sector. He has disclosed that some $200 million will be spent to upgrade facilities at the Burma Rice Research Station in Region 6.
Indian government has promised us some experts who will come to work with us as we try to improve and make changes towards our rice research program. And we also have 2 of our staff currently being given training. One is doing a doctorate, a PhD, and another one is doing a master's program too, because constantly we're trying to improve our own local capacity.
In the meantime, the Ghana Sugar Corporation has also been mandated to review its cropping patterns and utilize new techniques in order to cope with conditions which affected production levels last year. Reporting for NCN News, I'm Shardla.